Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Berkeley County School Board meeting this Tuesday, June the 9th, 2015. I call this meeting to order, and I declare a quorum is present, and the media has been notified. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I move that we amend the agenda of tonight's meeting to remove item 8 from the agenda and renumber everything as accordingly.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to amend the agenda to remove item 8, which is an item for action, superintendent's performance evaluation. I have a second by Mr. McQuillan.
No.
Oh, item number 9. Item 9. That's what I meant. Item 9 is what I'm talking about.
I'm sorry.
Must be those math teachers, right? I didn't really know.
I said 8, but I read 9, right?
Yeah, I meant 9.
Okay. All right, so we're looking to amend the agenda, item 9, the item for action, superintendent's performance evaluation. Been seconded by Mr. McQuillan. Do we have any discussion?
Is there a reason that we're removing it? Have I missed something?
Well, I wasn't at the meeting back in April when we heard from our general counsel, but according to legal advice from counsel, if I could read my notes, the evaluation is not required to be conducted tonight. There are ongoing legal issues that must be resolved with the indictment, must be concluded before the board can conduct a good faith evaluation. Therefore, that's why I moved to have this removed from the agenda.
Right, legal advice also says it is a contractual obligation that we must perform this evaluation.
Not surprising that we have two conflicting legal opinions.
I guess just my comment is it may be better if we I think it would be more wise if we evaluated the superintendent after all of the legal issues are over with. You know, juries are required to presume innocence until someone's proven guilty, but we as a board, when we're evaluating, are not held to that standard. And so I think it would be better for us as a board to wait to conduct the evaluation until the criminal process has played its course. And I don't think there's anything legally wrong with us waiting until that process has played out. At that point in time, we can conduct the evaluation, and we'll kind of let a jury decide or let make a plea agreement, something of that sort, so that we're aware of exactly what happened. Because it's not just like this is an indictment related to something that occurred off campus or something. The investigation, the indictment deals with the superintendent's performance as a superintendent. So I think that criminal investigation, its conclusion, is relevant to our evaluation as a board.
But I think that it also, his contract states that we have to evaluate him annually. And what we're evaluating him on is the 14-15 year, the year that he has set goals, and did he meet those goals? That's the way that I see it. And my concern is if we don't evaluate him prior to the end of the fiscal year, then wouldn't we be considered in breach of contract?
Yeah, just
Mr. Chair, the other part of this is, I think, the evaluation of the superintendent and the district goals is an evaluation of his staff. And I think it's fair to them that we close the books on this school year. And one of the ways we do that is by evaluating the district goals and the achievements that they've made under that individual's leadership. So I'm not inclined to wait on this, since there isn't anything else of bearing on those district goals that's going to happen before June 30th.
just to address some of the comments about the contract requires it. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but our lawyers wrote me today that they don't believe it's necessary, that it would be bad faith to propose delaying an evaluation until after July 31st. So legally, we're okay in terms of delaying it. It's just whether we want to do it now or not.
And this is a case, I'm sorry, I didn't ask for permission to speak. This is a case of the needs of this school district outweighing any legal interpretation. The contract says during the summer, and we've typically done this in May, so that there could be some resetting of buttons or reprioritizing of things for the next school year. So there's a much bigger picture here than the superintendent.
And I get that. I generally, before I vote on a matter as a board member, the two things I normally look at are, does this benefit our children in Berkeley County, and does this benefit our teachers? And I couldn't come up with a single reason as to why evaluating him tonight somehow benefits our teachers or students more than delaying it and making a decision once we have all of the information. And so that's, because I can't find a reason that evaluating him tonight benefits our students or teachers any more than it would if we waited. That's why I'm opposed to it, to dealing with it tonight.
How does the waiting for more information change the school year that's already finished?
Because he's been indicted on charges that deal with his performance as a superintendent. And so if he accomplished those goals, which I'm not saying he did, but hypothetically, if he accomplished some of the goals we're looking at as a district by illegal means, that would probably change my evaluation.
So is there, oh, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Do we think that there will be a resolution between now and July 31st?
I don't know, but the lawyers have told us we can even wait until after that for that. There's nothing legally wrong with us waiting.
Well, now,
Okay,
according to John Riegel, our lawyer, in his view, beyond the 31st of July would increase the board's exposure to liability for breach of contract.
But he says in the sentence for that, he does not believe that it would be bad faith to propose delaying it until after July 31st.
Bad faith on the board's part, but it still would open up the door for a breach of contract and a lot of liability there.
Because Dr. Thompson would sue us if we didn't evaluate him now?
It's a possibility, because it's breaching his contract.
So evaluating him now gets us what?
It gets it done and over with.
So what does that get him?
It finishes up his contract.
So no salary increase, correct?
Well, he has an annuity attached to his.
So evaluating him now gets him an annuity.
Anytime we evaluate him, he's going to get the annuity if it is a successful
So that's the
evaluation.
purpose of evaluating him now, is for the annuity that's in his contract.
No, it's to get it done, because we have got contractual obligation to do an evaluation each year by his contract. And normally we have done it in May, we extended it into June, and then we wait till tonight.
So there'd be no extension of his contract, no base salary increase, but he'll get an annuity based on the evaluation tonight. Is that what I'm understanding
Based on his
correctly?
evaluation period, whether it's tonight or any night,
And that's only if it's satisfactory.
only if it's satisfactory. Any other discussion?
Let's call the question.
And we need to call the question. All of those in favor of the motion to delay it, take it off of the agenda, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed, respond with the same sign. Aye. Then the motion is denied.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda as it is written. It is seconded by Mrs. Lee. Those in favor of the motion, respond by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same
Aye.
sign. So it still carries with a vote of 3-2. At this time, will everyone please stand and join us in the opening prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Our Father, who art in heaven,
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and glory, forever and ever. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting, May the 26th, 2015?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. McQuillan to approve the minutes of the May 26th meeting, and seconded by Ms. Swaby. All those in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Then motion carries 5-0. Moving on to agenda item number 5, Ms. Murray.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, Dr. Turner, members of the board, and all of you who have joined us tonight. We have a few special recognitions, and the first is Howe Hall Ames. The South Carolina Arts Commission presented Howe Hall Ames with the 2015 Elizabeth O'Neill Verner Award for Arts and Education on May 13th at the State House. The award honors South Carolina arts organizations, patrons, artists, members of the business community, and government entities who maximize their roles as innovators, supporters, and advocates of the arts. The awards recognize outstanding achievement and contributions to the arts in South Carolina and is the highest honor the state presents in the arts. So not only was Howe Hall Ames chosen as the recipient of the Arts and Education Award, the school is only the third elementary school, to receive the award in its 40-year history, which is huge. And it's truly an accomplishment. So at this time, I would like to invite Principal Swetke from Howe Hall Ames to receive this certificate and say a few words. I'd like to also invite Chair Dr. Turner.
Mr. Hayes, member of the board, Superintendent Turner, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. I get to shake hands and take selfies with the governor, and that's a great honor. It was one of the coolest things that ever happened, but truly, this is an award won by a school family, so standing here just doesn't feel right. So if I could have 2 of my student ambassadors and my fine arts teachers please join me up here, I would appreciate it.
Next, we'd like to recognize College Park Middle School for being redesignated as a national school to watch. College Park was initially named a national school to watch in 2011. So National Schools to Watch is an initiative launched by the National Forum to Accelerate Middle Grades Reform in 1999. Through the Schools to Watch initiative, the National Forum identifies schools across the United States that are well on their way to meeting the forum's criteria for high performance. Forum members believe that high-performing middle grade schools are academically excellent, developmentally responsive, and socially equitable. College Park has countless programs, I know because they sent me the list, that fit into each category. We know that it was no easy task being redesignated as a national school to watch, and we commend you for your hard work and your dedication. So at this time, I'd like to invite Principal Dukes up to the front to say a few words and receive this certificate.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And like I tell Dr. Turner, every time he comes back, it's like a big Christmas present for Berkeley County. I'm always so happy to see him. Just makes me feel good all over. Thank you for this acknowledgement. Like Chris said, this is really very much about what the staff and students and the community in College Park do to make this happen. We have a lot of challenges in the College Park community, and things have changed dramatically at that school since I've been there for 16 years. And we have had to respond in numerous ways to the demands of what our school needs. And I have to give Mr. Franchini the credit for us even pursuing the Schools to Watch credential. Years ago, he said to me, he said, Ingrid, why don't you go to the training and see what this is like? And Sissy Day, who was my assistant at the time, and I went to the training, and when we saw what was happening with Schools to Watch, it just made such good sense to do it, because it really is doing what is best for middle school children. It was very tough for us to be redesignated. The folks who were able to attend the redesignation ceremony heard that only 49 of the schools that originally were designated as Schools to Watch across the nation have been redesignated. It was a very, very tough process, but like all of these processes, what it really is about is reflection on what you're doing as a school. So thank you for giving us the latitude to do what we need to do to help children at College Park. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
And now I'd like to invite Mr. Charlie Davis to recognize a few students.
Once again, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Turner, I'm honored to be able to introduce two additional students tonight. They are state champions representing Stratford High School and Goose Creek High School. The first person that I would like to call up is Alea DeVoe. Alea, if you'll just stand right back here, I want to talk about you a minute. Coach Sutherland, Shane Sutherland is her coach. If you would come up and stand with her. We also have John Chalice, the athletic director at Stratford High School as well, and Miss Heather Taylor, principal at Stratford High School. Let me tell you a little bit about Alea. During the 2015 track season, she was selected as an all-region selection, an all-state selection in the shot put. During the state meet in Columbia, I don't have to read this. I got to tell you about this because it's a story. In the state competition, in individual events like this, you get 6 throws in the shot put. Through the first 4 throws in this event, Alea was leading. On the 5th throw, I know Dr. Westbury is looking at me here, but the Cane Bay shot putter went ahead of Alea on that 5th throw. Like a true champion, on Alea's 5th throw, she not only won with that distance, but it was her best throw ever. It was a school it was a school record, and to top this off, she is only a 10th grader. So she has 2 more years to make this kind of dramatic championship again. Let me tell you a couple other things about her being a well-rounded student. She's also a cheerleader during football season, and she was also selected, and remarkably selected, out of all the athletes, female athletes at Stratford High School, as Female Athlete of the Year as a 10th grader. So, Aaliyah, congratulations. You represented us well. Unfortunately, DeAndre Daniels of Goose Creek High School could not be here tonight, but I'm going to ask Coach Hoff if you'll stand. Mr. Husky, as principal, if you'll stand. Okay. Now you can sit back. Oh, I didn't see Cindy back there. Cindy, if you would stand. Cynthia is athletic director also at Goose Creek High School. Let me tell you real quickly about DeAndre, because I think it bears taking the time to recognize his accomplishment. He's a senior at Goose Creek High School. He's not only the state championship I'll tell you about in just a second, but he's was a member of the 2011 state championship football team at Goose Creek. He, in 2 weeks, will be leaving to go to Miami of Ohio University on a full football scholarship. He has been selected all region 4 consecutive years, all state 4 consecutive years. He played in the North-South All-Star football team representing the victorious South team back in December. And then track season came. And during track season, for the 5th year in a row, so even as an 8th grader, he made the finals in the state championship. In 2013, as a sophomore, he was runner-up in the 400-meter dash. 2014, he was state champion in the 400-meter. 2015, he was the state champion in the 400-meter. Truly remarkable career in track at Goose Creek High School. I'm just sorry he wasn't able to make it tonight, but he deserves, and his coach, athletic director, and principal deserve a round of applause.
Moving on to agenda item number 6, the citizens' comments. We did not receive any requests for comments tonight, so we'll move on to agenda item number 7. Deputy Superintendent, item for actions. Dr. Levine?
If you want to slip out, if you want to let them slip out. There you go.
Good evening, Board Chair Hayes, Interim Superintendent Turner. Wait, I hope. Thank you. Good evening, Board Chair Hayes, Interim Superintendent Turner, members of the board. Policy IHAA, final examinations, and administrative rule JCDA, student behavior code, have been submitted to you for the approval of revisions. The recommended changes for policy IHAA include the computational weight for cumulative examinations, standardized AP, IB exams being taken in lieu of locally developed cumulative examinations by students taking AP and IB courses, and the removal of language referencing HSAT prep. The recommended changes for policy administrative rule JCDA-R include the addition of the phrase, the confiscation of contraband, as a possible consequence for students who violate the student behavior code. At this time, it is the recommendation of the administration to approve the first reading of policies as listed under item 7 of the June 9th, 2015 board agenda.
Do we have a motion for the item action first reading of the policies and rules, JCDAR, Student Behavior Code, and IHAA, Final Examinations?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve for first reading agenda item number 7, labeled JCDA-R, Student Behavior Codes, and IHAA, Final Examinations.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Obie to accept the recommendation of the administration to approve the first reading for policies as listed under agenda item 7A, seconded by Ms. Lee. Any discussion? All those in favor of this motion, please respond by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. And that motion carries. You have.
Thank you.
We have an item for information. Academies of Berkeley County School District, Dr. O'Gorman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Dr. Turner, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we have an update on our academy model. I want to point out before I start this presentation that this is actually designed for principals to use, or some of our other school personnel, a lot of which are out in the audience tonight, to use in different presentations they might have on site or away from school. So just please know that as we go through the presentation. So the question is how we're preparing our students to be college and career ready, what support do schools need to meet the current needs of our students, and how can businesses help? That's the key point, is to how do we get our businesses involved. So our academies of Berkeley County are synonymous with schools of study, our federal schools of study, which incorporate career pathways. We want to encompass the profile of a graduate, which is Molly Spearman's new vision for what our students should have when they leave our high schools. We want rigorous career pathways that are part of their IGP process. We certainly want those academy partnerships with businesses involved to provide us with real-world applications in our classrooms. And we want our students to experience have a capstone experience with data specific to the attainment of soft skills that they would use out in the workforce after high school. So the question comes down to what are we teaching in our classrooms, and so where does content come into play from our standards, ELA, math, science, social studies, or even welding, versus what kids need in the workplace to be successful, and we'll talk specifically about what those are. There's a video that was out on YouTube not too long ago called Did You Know? And it says we're currently preparing students for jobs that don't even exist yet. And so the question is, how are we doing that? And using technologies that haven't been invented. So that's a pretty tough thing for us to accomplish with our students as we are designing our instructional system. So this is a picture of an old school, and this is a picture of an old classroom. Okay, Dr. Turner, this is his old classroom. I had to point that out. Notice the windows open, no air conditioned. So this is back in a long time ago when content was considered set. So you knew what the standards were, or you knew what something specific was. And the ability to memorize facts meant you were smart. I joke about my older brother all the time, really, well, smart guy. Jeopardy, Trivial Pursuit, he could memorize anything. But if you asked him to hook up a DVD player, you got a problem. So was he really smart? That's the question. So today things are a little bit different. If I asked you right now to compare and contrast this Tariff Act and the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008, could you do it? I was a social studies teacher, and I could probably wing it or fake it and do a really good job, and some folks that have a social studies background could. But I can tell you right now, if I brought in a 10-year-old, they could Google this and look up at what those were. And the question is, are we challenging our students beyond memorization because they can access facts very quick? The question is, can we teach them to analyze that information and synthesize something new out of it? How are we teaching them to do that? So this is a scene. I'm not going to play it in its entirety, but this is from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Y'all have seen this scene. And he's actually talking about that Tariff Act, and you'll see the expression of students as it goes on. This is not what we're trying to accomplish in our classrooms. We want a very different kind of engaging experience. So how do we transform our classroom from this to something else? So the question is it memorization like back in the 1950s or 1980s, or Google where they search stuff and get access to information, or is it really something different? So what do we want our graduates to have when they leave high school? And this goes into the profile of a South Carolina graduate. Again, this has been formally adopted by the State Department of Education, was developed by Transform SC. And these are the traits that they want our students to have when they leave high school. So world-class knowledge with rigorous standards in language, arts, and math for college and career readiness, multiple languages, science, technology, engineering, so on and so forth. But then these world-class skills, creativity and innovation, things like collaboration and teamwork, knowing how to learn. And I want you to think about some of these concepts, because if I asked you all to think about knowing how to learn, what does that mean? How do you measure that? How do you know that a child knows how to learn? How do you know that a child is creative? That's pretty hard to get your finger on. It's not something tangible, and I'm going to come back and talk about that in just a second. And also life and career characteristics, integrity, perseverance, work ethic. So again, what is perseverance? How do we define that? How do we measure that? How do we know that our kids in ninth grade versus where they are in 12th grade, has that level of perseverance or integrity or self-direction, has that changed, and how do we know that? And I'm going to come back again and talk about what we are going to try to accomplish through our academy models. So looking at this picture versus Dr. Turner's classroom, it looks a little bit different. We really don't know who is the business person, who is the teacher, who is the student. Are these kids getting high school credit? Are they getting college credit? Or are they getting some kind of certification after they leave high school? So this is sort of what the classroom of the future might look like. Our kids really applying what they're learning in the classroom in ELA, math, science, and social studies into the workforce. And so compared to Ferris Bueller, this is a scene from Apollo 13. This is a point where the spacecraft is broken down, the oxygen tanks aren't working, and they've got basically a square peg and a round hole, and they've got to figure out how to hook up one oxygen tank to another so that they can breathe. And so they're going to ask a team of engineers on the ground to develop a way to get those oxygen tanks to link using only the materials that are on the spacecraft. So when you get to the scene where you see these engineers start to work together to solve this problem, that's actually what we want our kids to be able to do. Work in a team, here's the scene, apply what they've learned in the classroom in real life, real world kinds of experiences. And so what we really need is our businesses to come in and help us create problems like this. So what do problems really look like out in the workplace? How can we simulate those problems in our classrooms and build in our content standards so that students have a really robust educational experience in our schools. So how do we get our businesses involved? We want their time and talent. You know, we don't want businesses to think that we're just coming and asking for money. We want their experience. What have they learned on the job? What can they teach our students and our teachers about what they do? And here's the important thing: help define and measure those profile characteristics from the profile of a graduate. We need them to come in and help us define what perseverance is, what work ethic is, and things like that. Assist teaching those on the job as well as kids are out in the business place during apprenticeships. And then again, assist our educators in creating a learning environment that reflects what life will look like after they leave high school. So we also want them to partner with students to provide clear exploration activities, provide mentors, and then those work-based learning experiences like shadowing, internships, and apprenticeships. So our next steps, we are currently working with our business and community members to come in and help us to define those traits addressed in the profile of a graduate. We will continue that through this next school year. We will ask them to help us develop an assessment system so that we can actually measure how kids are progressing and mastering those soft skills and other traits. And then work to help us implement a comprehensive capstone experience, sort of a cumulative, what have I learned in grades 9 through 12, and what does that capstone experience mean to me as a graduate of Berkeley County School District. So that's kind of where we are for next year, or this coming year, I should say. We are constantly working. I'm going to ask Ms. Sonia Addison Stewart to come up. She's going to go over very briefly some brochures and some flyers that we've developed to sort of help advertise this whole thing.
Mr. Chair, Dr. Turner, members of the board, if you would direct your attention to your packet, there are several documents in there referencing the academies of Berkeley County. First thing I would like to point out, a couple of board meetings ago, we unveiled the academies of Berkeley County, the new logo that was developed by Chris Lane, a student at Goose Creek High School, and you'll see that logo in all the literature that we have here. If you would pull out the first document, which is a trifold brochure, this brochure gives information, overall information about the academies of Berkeley County. We have defined our academies, and if you look, we keep using academies of Berkeley County because this definition is specifically ours. We talk about the academies, the benefits to the students, and also information about academy partners and the partnership level. So this is an overall document that gives all information about our academies of Berkeley County. You have two 8.5 by 11 documents. The one I want to point out is it's double-sided, starts with the mission statement. This document is for our businesses. So when we go out and we're advertising and looking for academy partners, we want to give them a one-page takeaway that gives them information about our academies of Berkeley County and also how they can become involved, which is on the backside, and it defines our partnership levels. The last document, which is an 8.5 by 11 document for you, and we reduced it in size primarily to fit in your packets, but it's going to be printed on paper this size. And this is the benefit to our students. And we want this posted in all of our classrooms in the high school so that students understand, parents and educators understand how this is going to benefit them. We also want to make sure that we're using a common language when we're talking about our academies of Berkeley County. Not only is this going to be posted in every high school classroom, but we also want it posted in the middle school classrooms because as they start their career exploration, we want them to understand so that when they get to high school, the transition will be seamless. So these are our documents that we're using to promote the academies of Berkeley County. I also would like to announce that yesterday we signed another partnership with Stokes Honda, Gold Partnership Agreement. They will be working specifically with Stratford High School in their STEM Academy, primarily with their automotive technology program. But we're expecting that to grow into another academy, and that is based on Stokes' request. They are donating over $60,000 worth of time and talent to our students, and they are promising to do at least $25,000 for an additional 2 years. So I just wanted to make that announcement. Are there any questions?
Real quick, we've got I mentioned our high school principals. We've got some our guidance counselors and academy coaches in the audience. I just wanted to thank them for going through the growing pains and implementing this model and monitoring and adjusting as needed. These are the folks that work on the front line and do all the hard work. And if y'all don't mind, if we could just give them a round of applause as well for all the work. Thank you very much.
I want to say one thing. These really are important, and I'm glad to see that we're putting these into play, and I'm looking forward to the new school that's possibly going to be a STEAM or STEM school, because I think this will really flourish in a school with that type of curriculum. But I can remember when I was in high school, it wasn't in Berkeley County, it was in Charleston County at Wando, but I had no clue what I wanted to do. Thought I wanted to be a professional surfer, and my mom told me, you got to do something you like, and I'm like, Mom, I like surfing. And that didn't pay the bills. And so I did an academy with the solicitor's office in Charleston County and started working with lawyers, and I knew at that point in my life, this is why reading's important, this is why writing's important, and that's really what kind of led me into the legal field. So these things work. They give students kind of a vision as to what they want to do when they get out, and so I'm proud of y'all for putting this together.
Myself, I've had the opportunity to actually be in some of the schools and look and watch what goes on in some of these academies. And I'm telling you, the kids are excited, they are engaged, and they are really learning what is necessary for them to be successful in life. And I would, urge anybody, if you get the opportunity to get out there and get into schools and see what's going on. I tell you, I stopped at Stratford. We were in their automotive, and I'm going to tell you, those kids they were really doing some things that it's amazing, the things that they were trying to accomplish in there, and even the instructor was extremely excited about what he was doing, and of course, maybe because he knew that Stokes was going to get on board real soon too. But I'm telling you, there's just exciting things going on in the high schools.
Chairman, could I call on Mr. Franchini to speak?
To piggyback on what the chairman was saying yesterday, when we signed the partnership, we had the instructor from Stratford High School there, and the service manager from Stokes was telling him, I need workers already. Can you get me some of your students to come in and work in the afternoons in the summer and on weekends? And so he said, yes, I'll get you some. So he tell me 3 or 4 of your students right away. So they're still students, not his graduates, but current students. So it is working.
That's great. Yeah.
Excellent.
Moving on to agenda item number 8, financial services, items for action. Mr. Brantley, I'll send it on with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Turner. We have 3 items for action. Mr. McQuillan, just to transition a little bit, I'm almost 60, and I still don't know what I want to do. So. and Dr. O'Gorman, I had some of those classrooms. At least we had color photographs at that point in time. You have 3 items for action. The first is the tax anticipation note, this is something that we have done every year related to cash flow. It's a point of issue with the revenues coming from our tax dollars not getting here till and significantly in January. So we have low cash flow from July to December. So this actually helps us with making payroll and those kinds of things. And the cash flow analysis that I did, even though we haven't approved the budget, whether it's up or down, still the bottom line will still be the same. We're asking for a resolution of not to exceed 15 million, and the cash flow calls for a little bit less than that, but we'll still make sure. We just want to make sure we have enough just in case. But the actual cash flow is around 13 million. This is a one-year note, or actually less than 1 year note, and I think last year it was 0.019% something. So, ask for your approval.
All right, we've got a recommendation to approve the tax anticipation note. Do I have a motion?
Yes, sir. I make a motion to approve the tax anticipation note of not to exceed $15 million as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8A.
Second.
Okay, we have the motion to approve the tax anticipation note of not to exceed $15 million as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance, Agenda Item 8A. Do we have any discussion? Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Does the amount stay about the same every year, or was it different last
This,
year?
actually, when I did the cash flow analysis, because of last year's fund balance are going up, it actually dropped about $1.5 million, but just not having a final budget yet, I just kind of wanted to have a little bit of leeway, but it actually showed about 12.5 to 13 million. And so last year was actually 15.6. So it is dropping, and that's a direct reflection of fund balance and fiscal responsibility.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, discussion? All right, then we have a motion and a second. All of those in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed, same sign. Mr. Thomas?
Thank you. The next item is our funding flexibility. This was actually born in the area of the Deep Depression of 2006, 7, and 8, when the state was giving us some monies and it was going down, but they allowed us to start flexing these dollars to the general fund and or to other funds to help us maintain fiscal health. So they're still allowing us to do this. A lot of this now has become more just transferring money to the general fund to ease of accounting and that sort of thing, but these are some monies that are potentially might be left over at the end of the fiscal year, and we ask for your approval to approve the funding flexibility as presented.
Okay, we have a recommendation, and I move to approve the funding flexibility for the fiscal year 2014-15 as allowed by the State Proviso 1.31, 1.36, and 1A.16 as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8B.
I second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
You said that's what we've been doing the last few years, so this is right in line with everything.
Yes, yes. And actually, if you looked at last year's flexibility, it was actually more last year, because this year they transferred a big portion of a piece of this to the base student cost, so it's definitely going down. So,
Any other? Okay, then we have a motion and a second. All of those in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right, then, Mr. Thomas, your
thank you.
flexibility.
Before we leave tonight, I'll need to get yours and Dr. Turner's signature on that. Tonight we have the 15-16 budget. Tony, thank you. Based on the workshop and some other meetings we've had, just coming back to revisit the administrative recommendations and a little bit different look. I wanted to thank Priscilla Calcutt for the background. I thought about the kind of the road sign. There's been a lot of talk about, you know, extra money going towards roads. I would like for it to come to education, so we'll see where that happens at the end of this legislative year, whenever that may be. Prime considerations in developing the priorities, again, as we've talked about, is the teacher salary schedule. Ours is the lowest among Charleston, Dorchester 2 and 4. Dorchester 2 and 4 are the same, and by substantial margins, and serious threats to our competitiveness in attracting and maintaining high quality teachers. We've talked about expected growth, opening up a new school, reductions in special revenues, all stretching our a district general fund and needing to look at ways to just maintain the program quality that we've achieved. And also additional teachers to address class size and formula-driven areas. So we wanted to kind of encapsulate that in a little different way than we've had in the past, to talk about prime considerations in developing the priorities that we'll see later on.
Mr. Thomas, I think you and I discussed earlier that if we wanted to make additional comments as he moves through this, that he would very much appreciate our doing it. So with your leave, I would like to make a few comments with regard to these considerations in developing the priorities in terms of the administration's vision on this. I was absolutely stunned. This is my second day on the job. And I have reviewed an awful lot of data and spent a lot of time over the weekend. That wasn't one of the days. Reviewing a lot of information, and I had had a lot of experience in administration, but I hadn't been in this role for about 3 years. I was stunned by the difference in the cells of the salary ranges with regard to Berkeley County School District and our neighboring districts. I don't recall since 1998, when I first came here to Berkeley County School District, seeing those kinds of gaps and discrepancies. We're not talking about $300 or $400, because in some ways, when you run a very efficient school with a lot of support for your teachers, small amounts of money don't mean so much to a first-year teacher or a mature teacher. But when you're talking $2,000 to $3,000 differences between us and Charleston, I know what it was like. And also, you happen to have ended up with an interim superintendent who was a classroom teacher for 5 years out of the last 10 years in 4 different schools in Berkeley County. So I rubbed shoulders with an awful lot of teachers. And even before things got this bad, when my last year at Timberland High School in 2009, 2010, there were 2 math teachers in my department. I was a math teacher. One was from Pennsylvania, and the other was from Ohio. Mr. Jackson knows this because he supervised the math teachers there, so he was my supervisor in mathematics during the time that I was there.
The roles have changed, right, Dion?
And I mention this because it was so striking to me. We had 2 young people who had come to South Carolina their first year of teaching. They were bright. They had all the energy you would want to see in classroom teachers. They were well trained in terms of their college experience. They were going to be very good math teachers. But as the year wore on and I got to know them a little better and we chatted, etc., I began to realize that they weren't going to stay with us. The salaries, even at that time, were already too low. They were asking for their parents to send them money so they could make their rent. That's not right. It's not right. And I've seen now that the situation is even exacerbated. So you're going to see with the administrative recommendation is that we try to recapture the faith with our teachers, that we support them, we value them. And people can tell you about how you can get that response from teacher and let those teachers know you value them by talking to them. But I'm here to tell you, when you are a starving first-year teacher trying to make payments on a new car, trying to get a rent property, trying to get all these bills paid, and all that's new, and you're in a school district that's a world away from where all of your comfort zones are, nothing helps more, I don't think, than they're relieved of the worry that they're going to have to call, they're going to have to do something, they're going to have to scrape by just to live. I have to tell you that I think that this is not only a problem in Berkeley County, this is a problem in South Carolina generally. And I've been following the news stories that are coming out of Lexington School District, some of the districts that have historically made a lot of progress with regard to support, and they are struggling also to try to raise the salaries of their teachers. Beaufort County has 10% of its teachers last year that left because they could not afford to teach in Beaufort County because they couldn't afford to live there. And so they're going to have a 5-year program to substantially raise their teacher salaries in order to meet those kinds of demands. So when we say substantial margins, we're not talking about $500 a year. We're talking $2,000, $3,000, and in some cells, $4,000 differences as you move up in education and experience level. And honestly, people in the Tri-County area, with the 2 Dorchester districts, our district in Charleston, they will be more than happy to move around. We've given them the interstate to do it. It might be a little bit inconvenient, but they can do it. I don't want to lose them. We have them, and I don't want to lose them. So, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make that comment about how serious I view this situation, and we need a teacher-centric budget, a budget that affects them.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question too? And you may know this from observing this. I agree with what you say. I think that the substantial margin where we're at the bottom is not a good thing. I guess my question is, you've kind of been following this not only as a teacher, but somebody with a doctorate degree that's very interested in education. How did we get here? Why now is there this substantial gap between Dorchester and Charleston counties? What brought this here? I mean, is it a board policy problem or what?
No.
I know you said it was a general South Carolina problem.
Well,
but
funding in general. I mean,
Okay.
the funding is depressed from the state level. You know this.
Yeah.
You've heard it over and over again as board members. But I don't know that as many districts right now that I'm reading, that the people are realizing that if we don't do something about the funding stream, especially with Act 388 and narrowing our choice for funding down to a very narrow source, that we're headed for disaster. And there's going to be a lot of that happening. I think there's going to probably be a groundswell. There were already signs several years ago to have a task force to take a state task force to take a look at this and figure out a way, that's all we're saying, figure out a way that this is not so painful and people are not so, going through these kinds of contortions because it's just impossible. And I think the secret is at the state level. And I think our state Supreme Court and our Chief Justice describing the system of financing public education in South Carolina as a fractured system. And when you have a judge write words down in an opinion, it's real hard to kind of take them back, And I think she meant what she said. It's fractured. So we need to call on our legislative representatives in Columbia to truly please take the time. Get the smartest people you can find and come back, and this thing that's broken in all these different pieces and parts, try to figure out a way for us to make sure that we absolutely ensure that our teachers are having a joyful career and our students are in joyful classrooms. Teachers who are worried have a hard time teaching children, and because if people aren't happy in the classroom, teachers and students, learning is going to be really hard to come by. And I felt sorry for those young teachers. They left us, and they shouldn't have. We need math teachers. We need math teachers in Timberland. We do, and that's what we need to do. All right. So I appreciate your asking the question. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You
I'm
might
going to go ahead
want
and
to move
call
on.
for the vote if that's all right. Go ahead and call for the vote. You have seen these before. These are, as the administration had gone through the priorities that y'all have seen in the workshop and prior meetings, we determined that these, as far as where we are at this point in time with the level of mills that we could increase and the lack or the amount of state revenue that we're getting through the base student costs and other avenues, even with the transferring of lottery money to the base student costs, these are the items that we feel like we can fund with the budget at 17 mills that we've talked about and the increase in state dollars. These all add up to $14.6 million. If you go down to third and fourth bullet, if you remember those allocations by formula, that was $5.1 million total. In our discussions with the administration, we decided to do the FTEs per formula for K through 12, and then split the rest of them by half, and then still not get the whole 5.1, but we felt like this would get us phase one onto the right path. Of course, the option one salary schedule that we've talked about, we would love to do 2 or even 3, the $4 or $6 million option. But where we are with state revenues and the level of mills that we can assess. The only one that can really fund is the $3 million unless we don't do some other stuff. So I'm not going to repeat all these. These are priorities that made it. We have to do the next in elementary. We did add at the next to the last, the Philip Simmons Elementary Middle Administration. Will have to hire them mid-year. So we added that to the list just for us to have discussions about opening schools in the following fiscal year. So I wanted to kind of keep that point there.
Again, to follow up if I could, the $3 million, that's for cost of living, and it will not close the gap completely between us and Charleston County. We still have $400 or $500 discrepancy still, but it will take a huge bite out of it. And rather than something being so big that you bury your head about it, like education finance, you know, we need to go ahead and do something. Do it. And so that's what I can do, we feel, and so that's, I just want to make sure no one leaves this room thinking that a $3 million cost of living with the step is going to get us at parity.
Right.
We're not going to be at parity, but we're going to be close. The other thing is Dorchester 2 is considering teacher pay raise, and it's sort of like chasing, you know how it is in a race when people are already ahead of you and they're not going to slow down and stop just because you're decided to start running. So that's our situation.
A quick question, Brentley.
Yeah.
On the Nexton and the Philip Simmons, those are for employee salaries and stuff to start
The
school?
Nexton Elementary is for the staff that has to be there outside the teachers that are transferred from the different attendance zones, but also operational costs like utilities and some of the, the startup costs in that area. So we feel like this is probably
I'm just
stretching it,
saying-
but we're right on the,
Yeah, so I'm just saying, so it's all for the operational issues of the school and doesn't include any of the capital money that would be for like new desk or new
No,
office
it will
equipment
not.
and stuff like that?
Correct.
No.
That will come out of the referendum dollars.
Yeah,
yes.
and this is the cost against the general fund with opening in a school that I think everybody ought to get this figure in your head, because if what I see in the studies I've read about exponential growth is about to occur, we all need to get in our heads certain figures. And $1 million out of the general fund, because you can't cut a principal into, you can't cut an assistant principal into, you can't, the media specialist, all of the folks that are in there. Plus, when you pull kids from 4 schools, some here, some here, some here, they really they're growing too. So they're going to hold on to more than the teachers you might think. If everything stood still, you could move a lot of teachers over, and we still will move some. But there are little bits and pieces that are going to get filled up by enrollment in those other places. So yeah, there's some teacher FTE in here, but not like the total enrollment projected for the school. Does that make sense?
That makes
Steve?
sense, yeah.
Good.
Brantley, then the reason the million isn't listed in there for the opening of the Philip Simmons Elementary Middle is because that's the next fiscal year?
Next fiscal year, and
Okay.
that number will be probably double because it's 2 schools. But we'll start analyzing what Nexton was and seeing what it costs, and I'll probably adjust that number when we're looking at that budget, yes. And I also want to piggyback on the last bullet, even though it's not last on the list, it's certainly important for our bus drivers. As you know, Dorchester 2 is going back to doing it themselves, and there are signs around all over Berkeley County recruiting our drivers. So we wanted to start chasing the drivers as well. So wanted to kind of, no pun intended, but chasing the drivers to stay here at Berkeley County. So wanted to make a point of that. Even though these items did not make the list, they're definitely important to consider and may be addressed depending the outcome of the state budget, whether it's positive or nothing at all. But we wanted to show you these numbers that didn't make it, because we'll still need to deal with this, if not, this year with new state revenues, if that comes to fruition, or in the following year. So wanted to kind of remind you of those that did not make it, even though they are important. In the discussion about opening a school, this is one of the things that definitely hurts our ability to manage opening schools, is the impact of, or the negative impact of Act 388 This number, that's 4.5 million that's in the red, will exponentially get worse as rooftops get built in Berkeley County, even at the existing mills or even at the new mills that we even use as to balance this budget. So if we were able to have this 4.5 million, the impact of our budget would definitely be tempered by ability to access those. And there's been a lot of discussion about amendment of Act 388, but I don't think there's any time soon. There's been some discussion about education finance reform, of which I've been on several committees, Superintendent Rex, and then some self-appointed stuff with SCASA and school business officials, and I'll refer to some of that a little bit later in the presentation. But this is definitely something that we need to continue talking to our legislators about and figuring some way to maybe amend it in some sort of way that we're allowed to access something.
The other thing, Brantley, I think that's important for everyone to realize, 5 years at 4.5 million a year, that was yours, that was available to you into the tax, but it's no longer available to you, I regard as a cut. If it had been available historically and is no longer available to you, what good could we have done the children of Berkeley County with $20 million across the last 5 years? Just think about it.
So then just to kind of reiterate off that point, for everybody's understanding too, kind of like what Dr. Turner said earlier, is the whole funding system is broke, because even if we had the ability to tax all the owner-occupied properties, the 4.5 million still wouldn't get us to a balanced budget today.
Correct.
Right.
You're exactly right. And also to comment about Act 388, the state budget in funding Act 388 is hundreds of millions of dollars, if not $200 million short of being funded at the state level by the increase in sales tax. So guess where that money has to come from? It has got to come from several avenues, but probably majority through the base student cost, because they just can't get it to where it needs to be. So we're paying for it twice, unfortunately. We've had a lot of discussion about the 3-year look back for catch-up millage. This is the code or the section of Act 388 that allows us to do this. There's several, Greenville for one is doing it, and they've been doing it, I think, since the inception of Act 388. And intuitively, if I may have known about it and I forgot about it, but it was into some discussion with my school business official peers, it became a point that we needed to bring it to you, because this is the only way we'll be able to balance the budget with the priorities that we've talked about. This is that spreadsheet. Hopefully you can read it okay, but I've highlighted in yellow the mills that we were able to catch up. And the reason this year is so important is because of that 12-13, there's 8.1 that we did not put on, we lose if we don't do anything this year with that. So we need to address it this year, and that's very important point to talk about. The value of a mill is estimated around $480,000 a mill. We don't access owner-occupied rooftops, so if you added all that together, it's probably close to almost $800 million if you were able to add that. But we were able to add that on the debt service side. But again, this is another negative impact on Act 388, is because we can't access those homes. So just kind of wanted to relay that. Highlighted those one in yellow. The 15-16 would be the new year. That's 5.5 mills based on the CPI and population. And the revenue that it generates is about $8.5 million.
And you might want to reference the number, if you do some investigation on the internet about other school districts' budgets in South Carolina.
Right.
The two words look back, look back over and over again, you're going to see in all of these school districts' discussion with regard to this. A lot of districts are having to make sure that they try to go in and recapture that millage that was not utilized under the cap.
Correct. Also, I alluded to the fact that I am a member of the School Business Officials Committee on Education Finance Reform, and there's a model out there called SCJ that's part of that. I like the model. For one, it talks about increases in revenues from tax incentives or tax incentives that are given by the state legislators, i.e. car taxes, all those things that are exempt from taxes. And part of that process we gathered all the mills from all the different school districts. The state average at that point in time was a 176.92. We're at 142.9, so I wanted to let you know about that piece as well. This is a new slide from before. We wanted to kind of encapsulate what our proposed budget might look like with the mills and the additional state revenues of 5.6 million or so, making our budget around 238 million. And then on the far right, I did some millage range with 5 mills range, with 10 mills, and with 15 mills range. So you would have to look at those numbers to see if we didn't do it all, what we might have to cut out because of that. So I wanted to kind of, and that's something we can kind of look at before the public hearing, or we can ask questions about, but I just want to kind of show you that the revenue does include the revenue from the mills. So we just want to kind of show you what the general fund might look like if this were to come to fruition.
Brentley, do you, on that slide back to the value of a mill, do you know, either that one or the one you just had up there, do you know what the value of a mill would be on, say, like a $10,000 car, what we would expect to see the taxes go up?
So you would take that $10,000 car times 0.06, so you get whatever that value is, and then multiply that by 0.1429. I'll do that. I can't do that in my head, but
I don't have my calculator right in front of me. It's in
but
my
that
briefcase.
it'd be what it is. So,
but yeah,
and
that's those calculations we'll have for the next meeting, and we'll give some examples so people to understand. The other point to make here, though, this millage, proposed increase in millage, is not for owner-occupied homes. Owner-occupied homes. So all of our retired citizens who are on fixed incomes and they have their home and they're worried about taxes, don't let anyone scare them. Please don't, that their taxes are going up so they can't afford to stay in their home. We're not talking about owner-occupied homes. These are rental homes, second homes, cars, businesses, planes, and boats. That's what we're talking about.
and some manufacturing that are not fee in lieu and or utilities that are not whatever. So these are some discussion points, and we've already alluded to option one, kind of where that is. Dr. Turner already talked about that. Even with this, we'd be $490 below Charleston at 14-15 salary schedule. So even if, you know, option one would still not get us to where we need to be, Dorchester 2 and 4 are considering a 4% cost of living and steps, and the step is worth about 2%. So cost of living and the step. So if you add those two together, it equals about 4. They may not get it, but they might. So you know, we would still be losing ground even with that. They're also, their bus driver scale is ahead of ours as well, when they're starting to look at, you know, doing that in-house now. So and also an interesting point, the state has not included a cost of living increase on the teacher salary schedule for at least 10 years. So if you were to average that, you know, right there now it's 5 million. If say just make it 4 times 10, that's $40 million that we could have had in the teacher salary scale if they had done something every single year. So that's pretty significant. Again, we've already talked about Act 388 not impacting homes, but the other classifications of property. As talking about forecasting and the impact of Volvo coming to Berkeley County schools, and trying to forecast out the impact of Volvo on Berkeley County schools related to the rooftops and the industry that's going to come here, it was evident by the group that, and again, this is still not finalized, but it was evident by the group that with the increase of the mills that we were talking about, definitely helps the bottom line in all models. So we're building capacity for that to happen. We're still below. There are a lot of lines that are negative in the forecasting out, but it does help us in that forecasting. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
I think what the economists are trying to say, it's better to follow a smooth curve than to have sudden lurches. when you have to raise because of the situation that's occurring to you. So that's what I think they're trying to tell us all.
Right.
Get used to it.
Again, I also wanted to make the point that the priorities that are recommended, along with the increase in state revenue, that this is the only avenue the state legislators have given us to raise revenue. So again, we need to work with those legislators, as Dr. Turner talked about, to look at ways to figure out how to finance education funding reform. And I also alluded to the fact that there's some $400 and something million in the state coffers, and they don't know what to do with it. Hence the kind of the road analogy in the beginning slide. There's a lot of talk about that going to roads. There's a lot of talk about increased sales tax for roads, gas tax to go for road improvements. We would hope that the state legislators would infuse our operational value of the state budget on education into the general fund for public education. So it would definitely help us able to address some of those priorities that didn't make it, maybe get to option 2, maybe to get to option 6, or somewhere in the middle. But we wanted to let you know that. But there's also been some discussion and talk about the state budget maybe not happening until July the 15th. But that is only to address the additional revenue. It would not to change, in my mind, what they've already done. Also, too, if you remember the last refunding of our SAFE bonds, there was some, we actually, again, we saved $18.5 million. We got a bond rating upgrade, but one of the rationales and the two rationales, ones that spurred our upgrade and some that kind of tempered it, is one is access to the Charleston economy, moderate debt, and very strong general fund reserves based on our fund balance. But the things they didn't like that could have maybe increased it even more is our reliance, and not only our reliance, but the reliance of all school districts on state revenue as their primary source, indicating the fact that local support is needed to help us with the bond rating.
Local effort.
This is a slide you've seen before. This is the analysis on per student spending. Again, we're at the bottom on average, but close to the top on academic ranking. So again, the bang for your buck, but we'd like to make some positive movement and move up maybe to level 50 or something. So, but we wanted to kind of share that with you again.
One last comment on this. With regard to a statewide look, I once was director of the Office of Accreditation, School District Accreditation in the South Carolina Department of Education many years ago, in which I sent out people to all over the state of South Carolina, supervisors, to look at schools and make sure that they were meeting the state standards for programmatic quality. And we would send them out to all the districts, and the word came back about some districts that would over and over and over again. And the phrase that those kind of wizened people use sometime was, well, don't bother to go back to so-and-so anytime soon because they stack them in deep and cheap. Think about it. Too many kids in a class and not paying enough for the teachers. It is a recipe for educational disaster. Berkeley County should never get a reputation like that. We're really flirting with a real problem.
Again, the next steps, and some of these we've addressed tonight with the cash flow and tax anticipation note. Again, to monitor the state education website for additional state information. Hopefully a significant increase in, I would hope to be the base student cost or something that's very flexible in using to help the general fund wherever they might put it, but something flexible, or state aid or something like that. Monitoring local assessments for additional local revenue. I don't expect to have any of that probably until August or September, but when I do, if it does reveal some additional, we can talk about that then. The public hearing, the notice was in the paper on Sunday. and that will happen on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2015. We'll have a presentation probably similar to this beforehand, and then go into the regular session like you are now, and hopefully vote on a budget so we can start planning for next fiscal year. We've already done the last bullet. And the last thing that we ask of you is to, that we recommend the first reading of the budget as presented, the 15-16 budget as presented. Again, we'll remind you that this doesn't set anything in stone, but it allows us to move forward with the public hearing and have a vote then. Thank you, Charlie.
All right, we have a recommendation from Mr. Thomas with the budget update and for the first reading. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, you do. I make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2015-2016 budget for first reading as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8C.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the fiscal year 2015-16 budget for the first reading as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8C, and we have a second. Any further discussion?
I have a question. Can you please repeat the amount of the budget?
Oh, the dollar amount that we're proposing?
Yes,
With all in, the proposed budget would be $238,224,042.52, but I didn't put that in there. I'll round it up. $43.
Any further discussion?
I do have a quick question. So with that budget, you know, in the last few years, we've cut some different fundings and some other levels. Does this budget fully fund all those items that we've cut in the past?
Well, if you looked at some of the items that did not make it, we wanted to put some stuff back in school supplies. And again, hopefully with what the state, I hope, will do, we may be able to address that.
But close.
But close, yes.
Close.
Yes.
But not quite. I just want to, we're not quite back to where we are. But
And that includes
it's
the-
really,
right.
it really will make a huge difference.
Any further discussion?
I would just like to thank you and all of your staff and Dr. Turner, Mr. Franchini, for putting the attention to this that it deserves. It's sobering to know how serious this is for our teachers. I've had the opportunity to share that chart about our academic rating and funding with at chamber meetings and that kind of thing. And our business partners out there are always shocked when they see it. They don't believe it, that we have that level of disparity compared to other counties. And so I'm happy about that because I know we have their support. They get it, and they understand that if we're going to produce these workers that Dr. O'Gorman described, that we are going to have to make sure we're taking care of instruction in this district. We talk a lot about construction, and that's fine because that's how my dad put, food on the table, and I'm a huge fan of all of that. But our teachers deserve better, and I do have a front seat to the teachers that are making choices, those beginning teachers. And for the first time in my 30 years in education, they're not choosing Berkeley County. And that's not good. I don't even like saying that out loud because I know how hard all of these principals and our staff work to not only attract them here, but hold on to them once we get them, because that's where you save money too, is reducing that teacher turnover. And that's what Berkeley County has always done so well.
Right.
So I want to thank you because I know this isn't easy to ask for more. I think your list and your needs are quite conservative, to tell you the truth. I was in a meeting just 2 weeks ago with the ESOL, the English as Second Language coordinators from all 3 of the districts. And 2 of those coordinators, one from Berkeley and one from Dorchester Do, talked about families moving in to their school districts, and they were not even familiar with the language that family, including those young children, kindergartners, were speaking. And these are professionals who deal in languages. And that is, we're not meeting children's needs when we're not taking care of those things. And I'm happy that stayed on that budget, because I'm pretty sure if I hadn't been in that meeting, I wouldn't have known the number of those little 4-year-olds that we have who do not speak English and whose families don't speak English at home. And that's just one of the items there. The other thing I want to say, I feel like I always need to say this because we talk about teachers as if they're apart from our communities. We educators pay taxes too. We own stuff and we pay taxes, and we see that on our tax bills too. And so I wish we could do more, because we're giving them what they deserve, only for them to pay more in taxes too. I don't want that to get lost, that you know, this idea that they have summers off, you know, that you know, they really don't need to spend all this money out of pocket. That's just simply not true. And so I'm thrilled that you brought us this budget, and I'm ready to celebrate it, actually.
I'd like to make one other comment. The reason for the analogy of roads in the beginning slide, there's been a lot of discussion about infrastructure for roads and economic development. Education is also economic development, so I wanted to leave you with that.
We've been in the road business.
We have.
And when,
Yes, we have.
when there's a major development, the state is asked to provide a sum of monies for a major development to provide infrastructure. I can't think of anything more important than schools and libraries, not just sidewalks and sewer and water and roads, but schools and libraries are essential infrastructure for a human family. That's what we're building, places for families to be successful.
Any further discussion? We'll call the question. We have a motion by Mr. Schwabe to approve the fiscal year 2015-2016 budget with the first reading, as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8C, seconded by Ms. Lee. All of those in favor of this motion, respond by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
The motion carries in a 3-2 vote.
Mr. Chairman, I think, oh, you have the superintendent's. Excuse me.
Okay. All right, we move on to agenda item number 9, which is the superintendent's performance evaluation. As described in communications, we are going to do this by district, starting with District 1, which is a vacant seat at this time. So we go to number 2.
Yeah, so, and I'll kind of reiterate what I said at the beginning of the meeting, but generally before I take a vote or take a position on a matter, I ask myself, does this help our students and teachers in Berkeley County? So this week I found myself asking, how does it help our students and teachers to conduct an evaluation of a superintendent who's resigned, who was indicted on criminal charges related to his performance as a superintendent, and is still currently under investigation? I could not think of one benefit to our students and teachers from evaluating the superintendent under these circumstances. This is the primary reason that I think it's a bad decision and why I will be recusing myself from participating in any evaluation tonight. I also believe that now is not the right time to do an evaluation. How can we evaluate a superintendent who has criminal charges pending against him related to his performance as a superintendent until those matters are concluded by a trial or a plea? For us to conduct an evaluation now while a criminal investigation is ongoing is unwise. We should let the process play out and then do our evaluation. I do not understand why there is a rush to do this tonight. I also question, what is the real purpose of evaluating the superintendent tonight? It's clearly not for constructive criticism. Dr. Thompson is not here and has resigned. I did hear mention tonight of an annuity, and so I don't know if it's to provide a benefit to Dr. Thompson, but again, I do not see how that benefits students and teachers in Berkeley County. And so it's for these reasons that I will not be participating in this evaluation process and recuse myself.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Obie?
I think anybody could have said it any better than Mr. McQuillan did. And, like I've said the last couple of years when it's come up for the evaluation, it's difficult to give somebody an evaluation when they're under an investigation, and now it's even more difficult to give somebody an evaluation when they've been indicted on those charges. Based on the conflicting language we get from our internal lawyers, it seems like one day they think we should evaluate, and the next day they think, we're all right of holding off. I would think that if we held off on this, that Dr. Thompson and our lawyers and all would be fully understandable of why we're holding off. So with all that being said, I would be like Mr. McQuillan and recuse myself from this matter.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Lee?
All right. I was not privileged enough to have that email, so the last information I was given is that we are under, that we would be in breach of contract if we didn't evaluate him. So I'll do like I did in the years past, go item by item. I think that's the best way for me to evaluate superintendent. Under positive school climate, the things that I found positive were the creation of the new Sangaree Elementary intermediate bus stops to transport students safely across Royal Road. The use of the Raptor visitor management system that uses the IDs, visitors' IDs to scan for people we don't want in our schools. The quarterly construction reports that were presented to the board, I believe was actually one of the things in the areas of focus, and that was presented to us, and we do have evidence of that. On high student performance, the academy partnerships, including the first platinum partnership with McElveen Buick GMC, was a positive. The district-wide focus on PLCs is evident. Under community engagement, the expansion of our CDEP classes, this allows our children and families, more children and families to be served. That was a positive, as well as one thing that really stood out to me is that Dr. Thompson and his staff surveyed stakeholders regarding the high school schedule as it relates to the career academies, and responded to the stakeholder feedback. And another item that I placed under community engagement is our summer feeding programs, and I believe that's ongoing now, but this is something that we've done year after year, and it is important to many, many of our students. Under strategic human resource management, the district's summer leadership conference that was held last summer was a positive. The continued focus on minority recruitment is always very important, and it is a positive thing that I think that we have done and would like to see continued to be done. Under fiscal responsibility, the district received an overall unmodified audit opinion, which is the best you can possibly get. And the audit was done by Green, Finney, and Horton, as everybody knows. They also hosted a booster club and PTA board training. The board members of the booster clubs and PTAs or PTOs were all invited to, in Berkeley and Dorchester County, were invited to attend a training to help them understand the risk that could be involved. And one of the biggest things that I think needs to be mentioned is, one of the biggest positives is our Standard & Poor's rating increase from, and please help me if I say this wrong, it's AA minus, or is it AA negative? How do you say that? AA minus to AA, yes. I had my notes right, I just didn't know how to say it right. And then last but not least is our effective communication. the positive that I put on here is that our school delays and cancellations were thoroughly communicated in several different ways. Two things that I put down as negatives are our website is difficult for stakeholders to navigate quickly and easily. That's something that I have brought up on more than one occasion, not necessarily in a public meeting, but I have brought it up. And our 2-year calendar draft that needs to be posted for families. And this is my 3rd year running. I know that I'm getting a bit redundant with that. And it was posted for a period of time, but I think that's something that we really need to continue to have. Families need to know when the start of school is going to be. So I guess my overall rating would be, if I had to choose satisfactory and unsatisfactory, I think that was Mr. Hayes' email, it would be satisfactory.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lee. Ms. Schwabe.
Oh, I'm next. So I think, I mentioned earlier, I think the evaluation is really important of the superintendent, because it's not just about his work and his role, but whether or not the district goals that we helped create are being met. So Ms. Lee really went down my laundry list. I did go back and count up the number of documents that I reviewed as I looked at the district goals and the things that were in all of the presentations of the cabinet. And I had over 180 additional pieces of documentation and evidence that was different from last year when we evaluated Dr. Thompson. So it's clear to me that the district has continued to persevere under his leadership and some very difficult times. We have tremendous challenges from the state level and funding level and all of those pieces. And so I won't go down the whole laundry list that I created, but I would just make the point that I do believe the timing is important of this, so that we can have some closure for our staff and allow all of them, and for us as a board at our retreat next month, to really look at these district priorities again and assess where we are with this staff so we can move forward. I do think, to get back to Mr. McQuillan's point, that meeting district goals does support students. That's why we're here. And the district goals that were set by this board and by the staff members here have been met, and they've been met under incredibly difficult times. So I have no reservation whatsoever of giving Dr. Thompson a satisfactory rating.
Thank you, Ms. Schwabe. And it looks like I'm the last one. This evaluation is based on whether the district performed either satisfactory or unsatisfactorily in 6 strategic areas during the 2014-15 school year. These were identified as areas of focus by Dr. Thompson, the school board, and by the staff, and is designated as his evaluation criteria. Dr. Thompson's indictment was on an item that occurred 2.5 years ago, had nothing to do with this past school year. It didn't have anything to do with last school year, and we evaluated him. So this, to me, is the time we should be doing this and going through the evaluation as set forth in his contract. Looking at the 6 areas: the positive school climate, completion of the storefronts. If most of you go into schools now, you know that you've got to go through a set of 2 or 3 sets of doors to be able to access the school. One of the priorities was school safety, and I think that has been accomplished, and very much so. Not only from that standpoint, but also through many training programs, the Safe School Training Program and so forth that we have installed in the schools. Part of the positive school climate was we were going to get quarterly reports as to the status of the constructions and renovations, and we have received those on a very quarterly basis and a very thorough basis by Mrs. Myers. High student performance. Look at the programs we have: summer sale, extensive staff development opportunities, and teacher training programs. We have computer programs infused in the infusion of technology into our evening school, into our credit recovery programs. We have our summer school programs, our Mastery Connect programs, all of these leading to high student performance. We've taken the academy concept and we phased it in over a 3-year period. 2 schools the first year, 2 schools last year, and 2 more schools coming on this coming year, where we will have full implementation by the end of the 2015-16 school year. In the community engagement, we've updated the early childhood handbooks. We've got parent orientation, parent workshops, parent-teacher conferences. We have high school handbooks and training manuals out there. The academy materials. We have athletic scholarships where we have ceremonies and awards and days to take these kids and highlight them and put them out there for people to see. We've got Stuff the Bus. We've got the Berkeley Chamber of Commerce. We've got the Santee Cooper sponsorship. In the strategic human resource management, we have the summer leadership conferences. We've got the principal preparation program with the Citadel. Continuous improvement programs with the advanced ed program. Interview training. Our human resources have are training our teachers, especially our new teachers, and how to go out there and do an interview. What's expected of them in an interview. We've got Teach America, recruitment fairs with colleges and universities, as well as in our own district do we recruit. And then we've got the loan forgiveness programs where teachers, people coming in, can have these student loans which they can't pay because we don't pay them enough money. Now, with this program, many of their debts are forgiven. Fiscal responsibility. Yes, our website is difficult to go through and at times, but you can go on there and we have all of our financial information right there for anybody to look at. It's placed right on the website. Again, the unmodified financial audit, fund balance, we've got that up there and it's being consistent. And because of that consistency, we've even got our bonds lowered. And then Brantley in his department has used refinancing at critical times that has saved this district millions and millions of dollars. Effective communication, a relationship with the Berkeley Independent, Facebook and Twitter accounts at schools, and the district level, the district website. Examples of up-to-date communication techniques are out there. We've got our fast fax publications, In the Loop, Legacy Builders, numerous other awards, recognition ceremonies, retirement, pride, turnaround students throughout the year. And people are being brought into these, it's a showcase. And that's what this district needs to do even more of. I've been saying it since I came on this board. We do not toot our horn enough, and we need to get out there and do it. Overall, this district, Dr. Thompson in the leadership, I see nothing wrong with what we are doing. I find this as very satisfactory. Do I have a motion based on the evaluation results?
Mr. Chair, after hearing the board members' comments this evening regarding Dr. Thompson's performance as superintendent, I move that we conclude as a board that Dr. Thompson receive a satisfactory evaluation for the 2014-15 school year. As a result of his satisfactory performance evaluation consistent with the terms of his contract, the district will make a contribution to an annuity of Dr. Thompson's choice in an amount of 10% of his current base contractual annual salary.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Do we have any discussion, further discussion? Then we will call to question. We have a motion. I will have that.
Sorry.
And the motion is, after hearing the board members' comments this evening regarding Dr. Thompson's performance as superintendent, I move that we conclude as a board that Dr. Thompson receive a satisfactory evaluation for the 2014-15 school year. As a result of this satisfactory performance evaluation, consistent with the terms of his contract, the district will make a contribution to an annuity of Dr. Thompson's choice in an amount equal to 10% of his current base contractual annual salary. We've got a second by Mrs. Lee. All those in favor of this motion respond by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign.
Just let the record reflect that Philip and I recused ourselves, so it's a
Right.
3-0 vote.
3-0.
3-0.
Yes.
We know, recuse ourselves, so we don't even count as a 2. We totally step aside from it.
Right.
So it's a 3-0-0-0. Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Do you need a copy of that? Okay. All right, moving on to agenda item number 10, the superintendent's report. Dr. Turner, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say I've seen an awful lot of faces since I have been here for 2 days that are very open and very nice to see everyone, and it seems like educators live forever. It must be all that clean living with their students, but I have really felt at home for the last 2 days, and I really appreciate what Mr. Franchini has done, and I want to assure all of the principals and guidance personnel and all other district employees that are in this audience that he and I are joined at the hip almost with regard to how we're going to move forward in these few months that I'm going to be in this position. And hopefully our board will be able to find a permanent superintendent for us in short order. But I'm looking forward to this work. It's already been an amazing journey in just 2 days. We have in front of you a proposed 2015-2016 board meeting schedule, Mr. Chairman, that we propose for your adoption.
All right, we have a recommendation to accept the Berkeley County Board of Education schedule for meetings the following school year, or the following fiscal year. Do I have a motion?
You do, Mr. Chair. I make a motion to approve the board meeting schedule for 2015-2016 as presented by Dr. Turner in agenda item 10.
All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion to approve the schedule for the following year, board schedule, by Mr. Schwabe, seconded by Mrs. Lee. All of those in favor of, yes,
No
sorry,
question.
we didn't have a discussion.
On those, are we going to fill in later some dates where we'll take the school board meeting out to the community at some of the different schools?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other discussion? All right.
I'd like to have all the meetings in schools.
Is that a motion? Is that a motion to
We're
amend?
going to discuss it.
Our poor IT department.
Second.
Is that a motion or?
No, that was discussion.
All right, then we have the motion, and all of those in favor of this motion respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed? Then the motion carries. Is that all you have?
That's it.
That's it? Okay. Then we move on to agenda item number 11, which is executive session. Do I have a motion to move into executive session?
Mr. Chair, I move that we move into executive session for student attendance appeals, personnel considerations, and an employment matter related to the superintendent search.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to move into executive session to discuss student attendance appeals, personnel considerations, and an employment matter, the superintendent search. We have a second by Mr. Obie. All of those in favor of the motion respond by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. And we are in executive session.